Okay, my name is Oren Jones, and this is my Lab 1 project for Auto Feedback Lab. Now, we're going to start first by looking at my code that I've written for my LED light. The program was created in order to blink my name, my first name, O-R-R-I-N, in Morse code. We're going to be using Arduino. Now, first, I initialize by setting a constant integer for the button pin and the LED pin that I'm going to be using. We're going to show you this on my breadboard here in a minute once I go through the code. Then we set these integer values of t dot and t dash. These are the time lengths for a dot and a dash in Morse code. This is going to help us when we go next to define two functions. Our first function is for dot. Digital writes to the LED pin high delays for a time of t dot that we defined earlier. And then LED pin turns off for a delay of t dot, same delay as it was flashing on. For the dash, very similar, only difference between these two functions is that it stays on for 4 times the length, 1000 milliseconds. It stays on for 1 second instead of just 250 milliseconds or a quarter of a second. Now, using these two functions, pretty straightforward. We can now just write a function composing of the dashes and dots that are used to spell out each of these letters, O, R, I, and N. And we set it up, or setup. We initialize the button state to 0. And inside of our void loop, we set the button state to a digital read of the button pin. So it's going to check to see if the button pin is pressed before it decides what it wants to do. If the button is pressed, it's going to print out the functions in this order, O, R, R, I, N, all 5 of those. That just happens once the button is pressed. If the button is never pressed, it's just going to stay off. Digital write LED pin low. Okay. Let's take a look at our Arduino. First, coming out of pin number 13, right over here, all the way over to a 220 ohm resistor, diode, and then back to our ground. That is our LED pin right there, okay? Well, on this side, we have our button pin. Our button pin is number 2. 5 volts supplied to one side, and then once the button is pressed, it completes the circuit through a 10K ohm resistor to ground, and also to pin number 2. When it reads that output from pin number 2, it knows that the button's been pressed and that the code or the program can go ahead and begin flashing the LED in the order that we designed.